Hello, Sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking about MLS Cup, well, the upcoming Cup, MLS Cup, which is this Saturday, because we finally know exactly who is going to be there. We'll have our European roundup. We'll be talking about coaches, maybe even be talking about agents, and obviously players, Champions League, possibly American soccer's best day ever, question mark. We'll be talking about Mank and so much more. But first, joining me as always is my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Tuesday, December 8th? We are recording 24 hours later. We hope that you forgive us for that, but it's good reason, because I just landed back at LAX and came right to my house, and I'm recording this podcast after being on the road up there in Seattle for MLS. So we delayed it for 24 hours. And I know there's still soccer going on right now. Mosse, how are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome back to Los Angeles.
Thank you.
As you know, Alexi, I lived in New York for many years. I was a big fan of the Mike and the Mad Dog radio program. And some of my favorite shows were when they were on there during the NCAA basketball tournament. And they'd be doing a radio show, but have like one eye on a television with games going on. And would be like half talking, half calling the games. And it's going to be a little bit like that today, because we are, as you mentioned, we are taping this on Tuesday. It's 11:15 LA time, so the Champions League games have begun, and I have them on. I'm watching Zenit Dortmund right now, and so over the course of this podcast, the other games will be starting, and so I'll have my eye on that. So if I seem a little bit distracted today, it's for that reason.
It's completely understood, and I have the exact same thing over here to my right-hand side here. So Reyna, for American fans out there, just made the scene. He did not start, but they put him in with Dortmund being down a goal right now, playing away to Zenit. Okay, so I mentioned that I was up in Seattle for MLS. Before we get there, because I want to talk to you a little bit about the entire trip. Did you watch anything interesting this week? You see anything? Listen to anything?
A couple things. I've finished the HBO show Industry. I was watching that week to week, but they dropped the remaining episodes on HBO Max, and I binged them. I also finished a tremendous true crime doc on HBO, Murder on Middle Beach. I don't know if you've seen any of that, but I thought it was excellent. And I also listened to a fantastic podcast, which I highly recommend. It's on the Hollywood Con Queen. Have you heard about this at all? It's a Chameleon podcast. It's about this crazy story, this person that's been pulling this scam in the movie industry for the last several years. I can't even explain it that well, but it involves convincing people to fly to Indonesia under false pretenses to work on a movie that isn't really a movie, that doesn't, and it's really good. Hats off to my friend Dan Houtman, who recommended it, and it was every bit as good as he said.
Okay,
it would be.
I'm gonna check that out.
I highly recommend that one to you. So.
Definitely gonna check that out. And I did see the HBO Murder on what was the street name?
Middle Beach.
Or Middle Beach, exactly. And it's a wild one with incredible history and footage there that they got. So that's a good one to recommend. I'm going to check out your podcast that you did, because I'm going for a run later today and I need something. I also saw on Netflix, there's a new movie out called Mank, M-A-N-K. And it is, how do I describe it? It is about Herman Mankiewicz, who, for those who don't know, was a screenwriter years ago. And he wrote the screenplay for Citizen Kane, along with Orson Welles, and it goes through this crazy life of this screenwriter. And he was a larger than life type of personality, alcoholic, hellraiser, but incredibly intelligent and a wonderful, wonderful writer. And it goes through, it's in black and white. And so it almost mirrors the angles and the shots in the way that Citizen Kane was shot as this story about the screenwriter, and going through the process of writing what many feel is the greatest movie in history. But here's the problem. Okay, so it stars Gary Oldman, what a wonderful, wonderful actor. I think we can all agree. The problem is that if any of you saw the movie Hannibal, Gary Oldman, you didn't recognize him, but you knew he was a star in it. He played the disfigured Mason Verger in Hannibal, one of the Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon type of series that it had. And he was disfigured and he had this American accent voice. And the problem is that in Mank, he sounds exactly like this character that he did in that movie. And I cannot stop. And it totally took me out of the movie. And I know not everybody saw that movie, so it's fine if you didn't. You're not gonna be affected. But if you do see this, now that I've planted the seed, you are going to absolutely hear it the first time that he opens his mouth. And you juxtapose it because in the Hannibal movie, he is hideously disfigured and just does not look anything even remotely like a human being. He's in a wheelchair, and and in this one, he's perfectly fine in body, maybe not in mind, but certainly in body. And yet that voice, it's unmistakable. All right, I'll be interested to see if anybody else had the same reaction to that. Still a good movie, still worth your 90 minutes. Interesting in the way that it was shot, and just an interesting story about this guy. And it also shows what the Hollywood studio scene was back then and how they were fighting, and Randolph Hearst and that whole thing involved in Citizen Kane. So that's a good one. Anything else, Mosse?
No, Alex Dowd does want me to mention, you might have heard there's some construction going on in my building. So if you hear that throughout the podcast, that's what that is. Looks like
we are living
directly above me.
We are
either construction or something else is going on, but
no, don't worry. No apologies. No apologies necessary. We are a living, breathing, alive type of podcast here. And so we work through these things. We incorporate them in. I mean, at least they're working, right? I mean, who knows? Yeah. Maybe they're fixing something up out there. All right. Shall we jump right into to MLS?
Let's do it.
Okay. So as I said, I came right from LAX. First things first, I calculated it, and the last time that I got in an airplane and actually flew for anything was back in February, when obviously before the pandemic and before everything changed. I start my pandemic type of thinking in terms of the lockdown on the 13th of March. But the last time I flew was at the end of February when we went to Nashville for a game. So it's been 10 months, obviously coming up on a year. And for someone like me, where it is just, it's all that I did every single week, and that routine and that ritual of traveling was just in the blink of an eye snapped and gone. This was a weird and surreal and jarring type of experience to go to LAX, to get in the plane, to do all that kind of stuff. I will say, I did not see a single person that was not wearing a mask. Now, obviously, you have to wear it, and they don't let you on the plane or anything, but there was nobody that was making a stand or making a stink out there when it came to mask wearing. The people there were wonderful, whether it was the folks at LAX or the people working for the airlines or TSA. Everybody could not have been more helpful and pleasant and nice despite the difficult circumstances. There weren't a lot of people on my plane. And we took all of the precautions and the safety measures. So you have safety measures when it comes to us at Fox. You have safety measures when it comes to the stadiums that you're going to the states that you're going to, the cities, to the hotels. So everyone has safety measures, and sometimes everyone has different ones or more ones. And we took all of those precautions beforehand, during, and after. It was. You do fall back into your routine, but it still takes a while to kind of reboot and reset to that travel thing. And it was great. It was wonderful. The trip up there, in and out, 24 hours. But just to actually be at that stadium, to see Seattle hosting Minnesota, it was nuts. It was, well, the game was nuts, but just the experience, having not been there for so long, was great. I had a really, really good time. And we got to see what is arguably one of the great games, and some maybe would argue the greatest MLS playoff game unfold before us, and yet it was in a empty and silent environment. And that was very, very strange, Mosse, because this could go down, as I said, as one of the great playoff games in history. And it deserved fans, especially in Seattle, where you could have had 60,000 people going crazy to see this comeback of epic proportions. So for anybody that missed it or didn't see it, Seattle hosting Minnesota. Minnesota comes in flying, all sorts of confidence. Seattle, defending champs, playing at home. Minnesota goes up 2-0. Think they're cruising. This is it. Minnesota, the Loons are going to MLS Cup. Not so fast. Not so fast. You never know when Schmetzer time is going to hit you, and it hit. And Seattle came and scored 3 goals. And ultimately in regulation, they get the 3-2 win to send them off to yet another MLS Cup. All right, so that's the big picture type of thing. Mosse, you worked this game, you saw this game. What were a couple of your takeaways before we dive into a little more detail?
Well, first off, I was not in Seattle. I was the one person left behind in LA. I felt like the kid from Home Alone. It was very depressing, but nevertheless, it was an incredible game. You know, it's cliche to say this, but in the heart of a champion in Seattle Sounders, they never quit. You know, once Will Bruin scored that goal, you knew it was trouble for Minnesota. And again, set pieces. I know that's been your theme for years covering these games. It so often ends up deciding these games, and it did once again in Seattle's favor.
Yeah, so we were talking at halftime, Rob Stone and I, because we were kind of this high end zone nest, which was where our perch was for the game. And we were talking about, because you're going in down if you're Seattle. So what does Schmetzer do? How does he approach this? And we talked about the set pieces, because Seattle had plenty of the ball, plenty of opportunities. It was almost at times they were doing patterns to goal. In the way that they were able to get at Minnesota down the sides with Jordan Morris and company, but their ruthlessness was missing, and so you got to change it up. And I'll tell you what, I agree with my friend Stu Holden, who did the game with John Strong. I do think that Brian Schmetzer went with his heart as opposed to his head in terms of his starting lineup, leaving out a guy like Lerdam and these types of players that have been there, done that, because he wanted to play because he wanted to play the hot hand. But ultimately, he got it right. And I think he took a while to make those subs. Everyone was saying, hey, come on. But you don't second guess Brian Schmetzer. He figures it out. And but to your point, this was a situation where you had a Seattle Sounders team that's been there, done that. They don't panic. They are built on not just a couple years, but many, many years of success. It fuels and fires each and every one of those players to recognize that, all right, we made mistakes and we are in a hole here, but because we're Seattle, we're not going to panic and we're going to find a way out of it. And I just think you saw the perfect illustration of a team that's been there, done that, as opposed to a team that couldn't believe where they were in Minnesota and let it get away. Minnesota, it's going to be on you. To a certain extent, it's understandable because of your naivete and your inexperience in this game. But you're going to look back for a long time and say, we let that one get away and we shouldn't, because this was a pathway to MLS that you had in the palm of your hand and you pissed it away. And who knows when you're going to get back. Seattle has made a habit of being great and going to MLS Cups. If I had to put money on Minnesota being back a game away from going to MLS Cup this time next year, I'm not taking that bet.
Yeah, it did have kind of an Atlanta Falcons, New England Patriots feel to it. Although I will say, in Minnesota's favor, they have a player in Emmanuel Reynoso who is capable of carrying any team anywhere. I mean, what a wonderful talent. I know the Seattle folks were a little bit put off by the Lodero-Reynoso comparison. They felt like Reynoso hadn't completely earned that yet. But I'm sorry. I think he's worthy of all the praise that we were giving him. We really set this up as this great clash of South American number 10s, Lodero versus Reynoso. And around the 70th minute last night, I was already envisioning the whole theme of MLS Cup being this all Argentinian clash of Zelarayan versus Reynoso. Instead, it becomes Zelarayan versus Lodeiro, which is also very good too, and keeping the sort of South American theme going. It is amazing. It's really struck me all season long, just the introduction of these South American playmakers into MLS the last few years, how much they've elevated the quality of the league and how much fun they all are to watch. And I kind of felt bad for Reynoso last night because his performance deserved to be rewarded with a victory. It wasn't his fault, anything that happened wrong. He certainly held up his end of the bargain.
Yeah, we were getting ready. And it's interesting because we talked to Brian Schmetzer, the coach of Seattle, before the game, and he made a point of talking about, and this wasn't disparaging Reynoso, but saying that, look, this is a new player and he had a long way to go to achieve the level and the influence that Nicolas Lodeiro had done. But we were, almost to the end of that game saying, if there was ever a moment where he was not only as good, but better, this was it. And then everything just changed and the soccer gods smiled down on Seattle. I will say this, and I said this after the game. If Seattle goes into Columbus and plays against Columbus in MLS Cup this Saturday with the same type of posture and makes the same types of mistakes, that's not happening twice. You go to that well again, and it will not be there. Columbus will make you pay. So they got to clean it up. Schmetzer talked to us after the game and understood that they have to clean up set pieces and these types of things, fouls, unnecessary fouls, and just being like he said, and we have talked about, just being a whole lot more ruthless with the opportunities that are basically handed to you. But I think this is shaping up to be a really interesting and really competitive MLS Cup between these two teams. Seattle is the favorite, but I'm hard pressed to say that I would put all my money on one team or the other.
Well, we talk about the unpredictability of MLS, but we should say these were two of the best, probably the best 5 teams in the league all season long. Columbus actually led the Supporters Shield race for a long time, and then they were leapfrogged by Philadelphia and Toronto. They finished as the 3rd seed, while Seattle was a number 2 seed in the West. So for all the zaniness we talk about with MLS all the time, it's 2 teams that were the higher seed in all the playoff games they played, were at home in all the playoff games they played, and they end up meeting in MLS Cup. So yeah, I agree. It's a terrific matchup. So many great matchups all over the field. We already mentioned Lodeiro versus El Rayan. Obviously, you have Zardes against Rui Diaz, or you can even frame it as Zardes versus Morris if you want to make it an American thing.
Oh yeah.
I of course have my eye on the Brazilian midfield tussle of Artur, who got the winner against New England in the conference final, versus João Paulo. Even in goal, it looks like Eloy Room might be fit, and if he's in there, him versus Fry is a great matchup. The managers, Caleb Porter versus Brian Schmetzer, no love lost there. So yeah, so many great matchups in this game.
It should be noted, the reason why Columbus is hosting and why we as Fox are going to Columbus for this MLS Cup is because, for those that either don't know or forgotten, the seedings matter, and the seedings were made from points per game. So it really is, incredibly close when it comes to why Columbus is hosting. They had a 1.78 points per game finish for the season, regular season. They played 23 games and had 41 points. The Sounders, remember I said Columbus has 1.78? The Sounders had 1.77 points per game, but the Sounders played one less game, only playing 22, and had 39 points. So there's that one game out there that had the Sounders actually played it, won it, that would have been the switch, because they would have gone, well, in all things right there, they would have been pushed up at least to be tied with, I don't know, the calculation there. But it is interesting. And once again, it just highlights the fact that 2020 is not about being fair or being perfect or being right. It's just about things that you had to do, and you make the best of it. But it also is going to give us an opportunity to head back to a place in Columbus where a lot of things started. And this, the way I think it's being framed right now, is this is going to be the last Columbus Crew game, certainly, in this stadium that was built for the Columbus Crew as they move into their new stadium. And so it is kind of fitting if that's ultimately what is going to happen, because Columbus has played such a huge and historical role in not just MLS soccer, but American soccer. And so to go back to this storied place is going to be fun. And as I said on the broadcast last night, the story of why Columbus continues to be in and of itself is something to behold. And it's because of the incredible work of the people of Columbus and the supporters when it comes to this team. And I'll be the first to raise my hand. I didn't think it was going to continue because keep in mind, a few years ago, this was a team on the move, and they went out, they saved the crew, they found new ownership, and as I said, now they're staring at a week here where they get to celebrate this stadium, they get to celebrate this team in yet another MLS Cup, and they get to look forward to the new ownership and this new stadium coming online. So there's, like you said, there's stories on both sides. It's an amazing, and it's a really cool matchup.
I have already been tasked by our boss, Zach Kenworthy, with putting together a whole feature on the history of that stadium. And so I've been researching this morning. And yeah, as you mentioned, 2 MLS All-Star games there, 2 MLS Cups, Women's World Cup matches in 2003, all those men's World Cup qualifiers against Mexico, even going back to the famous one in 2001, which really set off the whole Dos a Cero thing. So yeah, so much history there. It is worth mentioning, though, since MLS went to this format of the team with the best record hosting MLS Cup in 2012, Columbus 2015 is the only home team to lose a match in 90 minutes. They lost to, ironically enough, Caleb Porter managed Portland that year. Now, Seattle did win MLS Cup in Toronto in 2016, but that was on penalties after a 0-0 draw. So you get into that whole thing of, is that technically a win or not? So Columbus is the only one that actually lost a game at home during this span since 2012 when they went to this format of the team with the better record hosting the final.
So Columbus Stadium, which is where we're going, Maffrey Stadium, I'll never forget when it first came online. It came online a couple of years after MLS started, and it was the prototype and the very first soccer-specific stadium. When you hear people talk about soccer-specific stadiums, this was what came online first. And for the most part, it was ours, and it was great because it started something that then led to your Home Depots and everything that's come since. But it was and still is a kind of glorified high school stadium. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have heart and passion, and it's not a fun place to play. So I'll never forget when it first came online. We were in Tampa because I was playing with the New England Revolution at the time, and we were in the bar and we were watching the game came on that was opening this stadium. And I'll never forget because I thought that it was a game coming from Europe because of the angles, the camera angles, because we had never really seen American stadiums that were built for soccer have those similar type of angles that we associate with games that were coming from Europe. So even that little thing just shows how important that stadium was. And, you know, Lamar Hunt and everybody believing that that's what they were going to do. My other story from that stadium is I remember in the middle of a season, I can't remember what season it was, but I was on that point where as soon as I got another yellow card, I was going to have to miss a game. So we were trying to figure out how to do it and when to do it. And one of my wife's friends was having a wedding. And so I got a purposeful yellow card at one point so that I could, because I knew I was going to miss it. And if I was going to miss it, I might as well go attend this wedding. I have to figure out when that was, but I'll never forget in the middle of that stadium, going to the referee and explaining what the situation was, that I'm not going to hurt anybody here, and just understand that it's okay. But I need you to do this here. All right. And it was fine. He understood. Everything was good. All right. Anything else MLS wise in terms of, what's going to happen with MLS Cup? I know there's some more MLS stuff, but
just a couple more historical notes. Caleb looking to become the third manager to an MLS Cup with 2 different teams, joining Bruce Arena and Siggy Schmidt. And then Schmetzer looking to win his 3rd MLS Cup, which would put him second to Bruce Arena, who's won 5. For Seattle, it would be their 3rd in 5 years, which of course constitutes a dynasty, right?
No, we've been over this. Okay, a dynasty is either 3 in a row or 3 in 4 years. Okay, I'm sorry, I have spoken. That's what I think it is. That's how I define it when it comes to sports.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
I'm actually a tougher grader than you on this.
Really? What do you got?
Because I think the word dynasty is way overused. It reminds me of hip hop, how the word classic is so overused. Now, every good album is a classic, but the word dynasty to me connotes longevity. It needs to be a lengthy period of time in which one team towered over a sport. So when I look at dynasties in American sports, there's not really that many. I mean, you look at the Russell Celtics, who won 8 in a row in 11 and 13 years, the John Wooden UCLA teams that won 7 in a row in 10 and 12 years. And of course, the mother of all dynasties in American sports, the New York Yankees, who there's a period there from the 20s with Ruth and Gehrig. Lou Gehrig, who supplanted, who was the first baseman in 1925?
Oh, Wally pipped, right? He got Wally pipped.
So if you take it from the 20s, Ruth and Gehrig, through like the early 60s, the Mantle, Yogi Berra teams, there was a period of like 40 years there where they won 20 World Series titles. So that's, as Bob Casas has joked, the only dynasty that compares to the Yankees is the Ming Dynasty, which ruled China for hundreds of years.
Well, but don't you?
I look at that, the New England Patriots, Brady and Belichick. That's almost 2 decades and went to 9 Super Bowls. These like cutesy Golden State Warriors 3 and 4 year type of things. I mean, it's a great achievement, but it's just not long enough to constitute a dynasty in my eyes. So I'm even a tougher grader than you on this.
Can you be a dynasty the way that you're talking about it in the modern age of American leagues? I mean, with the parity that we have, a lot of it manufactured and salary caps and restrictions. I mean, wouldn't it be next to impossible? And so don't you have to kind of come down and look at it from a 2020 lens right now, or are you just a stickler?
Perhaps given the way MLS is structured, 3 and 5 years in MLS is the equivalent of like 10 and 12 years, the way some of these other sports.
There's a formula. There's a formula for it. But I will not call it a dynasty. Let's see. Other stuff regarding this game. There will, as far as I know, be fans. They had fans in the Columbus game the other day against New England, in which they won. So I don't know how many fans. It depends. It depends on the state, what they're allowing at the time, or in the next week, how things change. You never know how that'll affect the game. So that is a good thing, in that there will be fans to see this moment in history, and Columbus fans, a select number of Columbus fans, by all accounts, are going to have that opportunity. So, that'll be fun. Other MLS stuff, Mosse.
Pozuelo named league MVP. Any thoughts there?
I'm fine with it. I did not vote for him. I voted for Rossi, who I think finished second in the balloting, but I know a lot of people voted for Pozuelo, and I'm fine with it. It goes to your point where, once again, we are seeing this money being spent, but being spent in a smart way and getting that return. These high-priced, high-profile type of signings, not necessarily huge names, but undeniable talent and foreign talent that is coming in, that are fundamentally changing these teams, and in the biggest moments, stepping up and giving you consistent success and consistently something to feast your eyes upon. And Pozuelo is no different. And he obviously started last year, but for a long time he was carrying this Toronto team and doing it in a way that made you notice. So congratulations to him and to Toronto FC for giving him the opportunity and the platform to showcase himself. Who knows how long he'll be here, or if somebody else comes calling and he might want to go on, or who knows, maybe he'll be there forever.
A lot of leagues run into this issue. They don't announce the MVP until later in the playoffs, and it's a regular season award. But sometimes if the guy who won it ends up getting knocked out early in the playoffs and not playing that well, and other players emerge during the playoffs, the timing, the optics can be a little bit weird. Again, it is a regular season award. If this had been announced the day after the regular season, nobody would have batted an eye, because Pozuelo was clearly the best. Well, not clearly, but I think you could make a very strong case he was the best player in the regular season. But, Rob Stone, I thought, made a great point last night. He said, if Reynoso had gotten to MLS sooner and played more of this season, at the level that he's played after he got there, you kind of feel like, he would have won it. So yeah, that's the way it goes.
Speaking of Toronto FC, Greg Vanney continues to be in the news. Still no definitive type of move for him as he is leaving Toronto FC. By the way, I mentioned Brian Schmetzer. My friends up there in Seattle took issue with the way that I talked about Brian Schmetzer and his success that has come solely for Seattle. And, my point was with him is that we only have one environment and one circumstance and obviously one location to judge him. Okay. So when you ask me, is he a good coach? My point back to Seattle was, and on air the other day was, he is a good coach in Seattle. I would even say he's a great coach in Seattle. Brian Schmetzer is a winner in Seattle. Brian Schmetzer is a champion in Seattle. Brian Schmetzer is a legend in Seattle. But that doesn't mean that automatically he would be the same thing any other place. And we have no data to show that he would. Now, a lot of people took offense to that because a good coach is a good coach is a good coach. But the same goes for people in the news right now. Greg Vanny. Okay. The same goes for Ben Olsen. The same goes for Chris Armas. The same would go for a Jim Curtin if there's only one place. And I'm not saying that they can't go on and be great elsewhere. But, what if Brian Schmetzer went to a different team? And the reason why we're talking about this is because he's out of contract at the end of this year, which that in and of itself is very strange, but whatever. They've decided, if it was motivation or whatever. But if he were to go someplace else and the situation, the circumstances changed, who's to say that he would be good? Well, Seattle folks would say that he would be good. Now, Greg Vanny, obviously rumored to go to the Los Angeles Galaxy. He's been very, very good with what I would look at as one of the league's super clubs in the way that Toronto has gone about their business. It's not to say that he's going to be good in Los Angeles. We won't know that until we actually see that. So taking me to task because I have the audacity to say that he is good in Seattle and only in Seattle because that's the only place that he's ever coached. Come on, Seattle, you're better than that. No, you're not. I love you, Seattle.
You mentioned a lot of people took exception to what you said. That includes Brian Schmetzer's mother.
Yes. We all have mothers that protect us and significant others and that are sometimes much more protective and dogged in their protection. And I love it. And I love it. So, Ursula, if you are listening, all right, your boy did good, by the way, again. All right. Your boy is a great coach in Seattle. He may go on to be a great coach someplace else. Okay. And I would actually like to see that. I would like to see what a Brian Schmetzer looks like at another team. I don't know if there's going to be offers, if there's going to be opportunities. I would think he wants to continue with Seattle. And I would think ultimately that, especially now that he's back in yet another MLS Cup, that they're going to find a way to get this done. But if it's about money, how much leverage does Brian Schmetzer have? If he's holding out for more money, if Seattle's going to say, well, if you're going to go someplace, go someplace. But if he doesn't have another place to go, then you lose a little bit of that power. But anyway, we got Greg Vanny on the move. Patrick Vieira getting fired. Did you hear about this, Mosse?
I did.
What do you think about this? Because immediately the MLS rumors started to sprout.
Yeah, there are lots of people out there that think he's this great coaching candidate for MLS, and MLS team should be all over him. And then there are other people we talked to, including Stu Holden. I hope I'm not speaking out of school here by revealing this in the podcast, who kind of wonder, what's all this fuss about Patrick Vieira? Was he that impressive in the job he did? Where do you land on that?
I was impressed with the job that he did at NYCFC for one reason. He was a true believer. The way that he played was the system of how the organization wanted to play. And he did not stray from that. And he was able to articulate it, and he was able to show it on the field by the team that he played. And when it got hard, he didn't run for the hills. I appreciate that and respect that. Obviously, he's not coming back to NYCFC. So I don't know yet if given the opportunity to do whatever he wants, he would have a plan in place about how he wants to play. I don't know how married he was in MLS to the way that NYCFC played, or just the fact that that's what his marching orders were in the NYCFC and obviously the Man City type of system that they have there. Like, I don't think that he is cracked the code on the game when it comes to coaching. I don't think that he is necessarily better than our coaches that are here, but he's a big name, and he would be yet another sexier hire, and one with MLS experience. And so that's why I think people will raise their eyes and pay attention to something like this. But still, I mean, there's just rumors flying around, but still no real concrete type of rumors when it comes to him attaching himself to any place right now.
Greg Seltzer has an article on MLS.com for identifying which he thinks would be the most logical landing spots in MLS for Patrick Vieira. He's got Atlanta, Galaxy, and Toronto, and he goes through each one and why Vieira would make sense there or not make sense, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think he, unlike a lot of coaches that haven't coached in MLS, whether they're foreign or not, I think he would not be coming with any preconceived notions. Obviously, he has had experience in the strangeness that is Major League Soccer. And I do think that is a plus and an attribute that has significant value, because now it's not just about the name. It's not just about the sexy. There's also a past and a history of him working and understanding what this league is and what this league isn't. And part of working through it as a new coach in MLS is the frustration and, sometimes the lack of understanding why things are done a certain way. And you got to be able to get over that really, really quickly. And so that wouldn't be a problem with someone like Patrick Vieira. Anything else MLS wise, Mosse?
That's it.
All right. So Saturday on Big Fox, right, Mosse?
Yes, although the great Columbus Sports Day that I know Rob Stone was pining for not to be, the Michigan-Ohio State game has been canceled. Ohio State dodging a bullet there, by the way. I was feeling a Michigan win this year. That's
right. So we were going to have this big Saturday from Columbus with it's called The Game, right? The Game?
Yes. I don't think it's been worthy of that for the last 2 decades. But
Now, the reason why I know about this is when I came and landed at LAX and came home here, immediately my wife, who is a huge Ohio State fan, was up in arms about this decision, okay? And the conspiracy theories and theorists out there are, wow, my goodness, what's going on here? But you know what? So far, and fingers crossed and knock on wood, we're going to have a big game. And it's going to be the Columbus Crew hosting the Seattle Sounders with MLS Cup. All right, Mosse, you ready to move on?
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break here, and when we come back, we'll do our European roundup. Don't go away. All right, time for our European roundup. As we mentioned, we are recording this on Tuesday, right in the middle of Champions League and some very, very big games that are going to happen. So some of it will be real time. Some of it we will just put off until everything is kind of sorted out until next podcast. But still, plenty of stuff to talk about over the last week that has happened when it comes to the club soccer scene. Where should we start, Mosse? Over there with our friends from England?
Sure.
All right. We're going right to the EPL. Now, last week, I brought up a topic, and you said that I was burying the lead. So I'm going to let you decide what you want to talk about first when it comes to the EPL.
Well, why don't we start with the North London derby? Tottenham defeated Arsenal 2-0. Goals by Son and Kane. And listen, if you're going to win a Premier League title, you have to take care of business against the bottom relegation-threatened team. So Tottenham did just that. And let me tell you something. If Kane and Son stay healthy, they are going to be an absolute handful, because it allows Jose Mourinho to focus on what he does best, which is building a solid, disciplined team that's tough to score against. And he has these two monsters up there that can conjure up goals out of nothing. So he can still have a potent attack without having to commit that many men forward. So it's the perfect formula for Mourinho. And look, it's not as pretty as what we've seen from Liverpool and Manchester City the last few years, but nevertheless, it's effective. I know Arlo White is big on this idea that it's not that Mourinho has adapted, it's that things have sort of shifted his way, that the nature of this pandemic season with condensed schedule and more injuries and managers having to rotate more, it means that the teams like Liverpool and City that play the more expansive, rhythmic champagne football, they're going to struggle for consistency. Wow. While Tottenham have a formula that's more easy to recreate, and it's just going to be about churning out the points in a season that's more kind of a war of attrition. Do you buy all that from Arlo, or do you think he's not putting enough?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that feels like a backhanded compliment, a pat on the head, if you will, from Arlo to Mourinho, Tottenham, and of teams and people.
Yeah, there's some of that. I mean, the media has been so bullish on the fact that the game has passed Mourinho by. In the last couple of years, it's been about Pep and Klopp, and so now Mourinho having the success he's having. So they're a little bit. I mean, you got to give the man credit, but also they're trying to figure out a way to do it where it's a bit more measured, and they don't have to sort of go all in again on.
It seems like people don't want to give him credit. And look, he's a larger than life personality, and that kind of comes with the territory. My question for you is this, Mosse, and it not only applies to Tottenham, but the Mourinho effect. Can you give me an example of how it manifests in terms of a game that isn't pretty, a game that for the masses they don't see as appealing, and while it might be effective? So if you're trying to explain to me why this person is great, but in his greatness, and part of his greatness is dumbing the game down or making it ugly, what would you point to specifically on the field that a Mourinho team does?
Well, he's not a big proponent in pressing high. He prefers his teams to defend deeper, to absorb pressure, suck the other team forward, and then try to exploit those spaces on the counter. So a lot of people see that as a fundamentally reactive approach to the game rather than a proactive of pressing high and trying to steal the ball in the other team's half and being constantly in attack mode. And yeah,
that's different. Hold on.
Okay.
But that's different because there's difference. So you're equating progressive tactics with attractive and entertaining soccer, right?
Correct.
Huh. That's interesting.
I mean, even there was some chirping from Spurs fans during the first half of that game. They get the early goal, spectacular strike from Son. They go up 1-0. And a lot of Spurs fans felt like Arsenal was there for the taking. And instead, Tottenham just instinctively, like Mourinho teams do, they just fell back and defended the whole rest of the half. And like I said, trying to maybe catch them out on the counter, but that, a team like Liverpool or Manchester City would have jumped all over them and scored 2 or 3 goals early and put that game away. And So, it's a little bit of that. So, there's always that thing hanging over Mourinho. But like I said, it's been effective so far this season. That West Ham game notwithstanding, which everything I just said about the way Mourinho teams play makes it even more mind-boggling, that crazy game where they had the 3-0 lead at home and ended up tying 3-3.
Well, look, and ultimately, Mourinho has always stood on the fact that like him, don't like him, pretty, not pretty, he wins. And so they are sitting pretty right now. Are they for real?
Absolutely. I think they're going to be in it towards the end. I would still slightly favor Liverpool to win the title, but wouldn't surprise me at all if Tottenham won it, which would be very satisfying for Mourinho for sure.
So I guess my other question was going to be, are Spurs as good as we think they are, and is Arsenal as bad as we think we are?
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal, what a mess, Arteta. He's been, like I said, he's had this knack of coming up with a smart game plan and pulling out a result here and there against another one of the big six. And that sort of obscured the fact that just overall, you weren't seeing them play good football and we weren't scoring a lot of goals. And now it's all sort of, he's not even getting results against the big six. And just their overall play is just lousy. It's just lacking any kind of spark. And boy, they've got some real problems. Rory Smith wrote a great piece about Arsenal and how what's happening to Arsenal right now, you didn't think could happen in the Super Club era. You thought, that there's this idea that there's a super club insularity, that if you're one of the chosen few with all the money, there's only so far you can sink down. You really have to screw it up to find yourself where they are right now. But yeah, they've somehow done it. All
right. So I hear you saying that Spurs are as good as we think they are, and Arsenal is as bad as we think we are.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Quick look around here. Let's see. Liverpool cruise along.
So Liverpool thumped Wolves 4-0. So Tottenham and Liverpool level on points atop the table. Tottenham ahead on goal difference.
Okay.
Chelsea are third, which is where you should go next, because we did have an American goal in their game.
We did. So Christian Pulisic, who was not starting but came on as a substitute and came on and scored, which led to and maybe we can talk about this now or later, but led to what it was potentially one of the great days, for some maybe the greatest days of American soccer, with Christian Pulisic, with Weston McKennie, with Gio Reyna, all scoring goals at the same time or same day for their club teams. Obviously, we have Serginho Dest continuing on with Barcelona,
playing very well.
Tyler Adams. So arguably one of the great days, definitely one of the great days, but arguably the best day when it comes to Americans abroad, if you will, playing out there, especially when it comes to goals. And that was a cool thing. We'll talk about Italy here in a second. Anything else when it comes to the EPL? We got to talk. We can't talk about the EPL without talking a little bit about the Manchester. The derby's this weekend. Derby. What are we doing?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't? Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's So just to finish up on Chelsea, they went down 1-0, but beat Leeds 3-1. Pulisic got the third and clinching goal. Giroud, by the way, also found the back of the net. He's been on fire lately. He got 4 in the Champions League win over Sevilla. So Chelsea looking very strong as well. And then both United and City won. City took care of Fulham 2-0. United also fell behind and then rallied, beat West Ham 3-1. And so that sets up this upcoming weekend. United host City. In that United win over West Ham, Paul Pogba scored a spectacular strike. So you would have thought we'd be going into this game with Pogba on a high, but his agent, Mino Raiola, decides to put his foot in his mouth. And so now, very negative stories surrounding Paul Pogba as we enter this very crunch week here for Manchester United with the Champions League game they're going to play today, which we'll talk about in a minute, and this derby looming against Manchester City.
Can I just say something about agents? Your agent is an extension of you. Your agent represents you. You hire your agent and you pay your agent, either directly or indirectly. You pay, and that person makes money off of you. And therefore, it is on you. If your agent does or says something that reflects poorly on you, then it is up to you. It is incumbent on you to go and fix the situation. Okay. Now, look, agents all the time do the bidding of players. That's part of what their job is. Sometimes they'll say something in order to create a situation that they feel is advantageous to their client. Sometimes they will say something in order to get a message out there that their client wants out there. Sometimes they will do things on their own because they feel it benefits their client, and sometimes you have to trust your agent to be able to do that. But if this is your agent talking, okay, you can't just say, "Well, it's just my agent talking. I have nothing to do with that." No, these are your people. This is your person, and this is who is speaking and talking for you. And if you don't want that person doing that, and you don't want to be held accountable for what that person says and does for you, then you fire them. So look, Mino Raiola, right? Raiola. God. Let me try that again. Mino Raiola.
Perfect.
Is that right?
Yeah.
God, it's so hard. Why is the A second letter? Anyway, super agent, right? If you are a big player, chances are you are going to be within his roster is long. He is a very public type of figure and uses it to his advantage and uses that type of leverage. I mean, that it's happening now with Paul Pogba. Is this a surprise, Mosse? I mean, this is what Paul Pogba is. I don't necessarily think that he is a problem, but this is not heading anymore in a positive direction, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Pogba fan. I do think he's been miscast. He's a moments player at a position in which people expect more consistency. He's a guy that has a couple of great moments of skill a game, and once a month will crank a shot from outside the area in the upper 90. And you can package that and put together a nice YouTube video that makes it seem like he's the greatest player ever. But if you watch him week in, week out, he's not consistently taking games by the scruff of the neck like people expect great central midfielders to do. And by the way, there's this revisionist history. I hear people say all the time, why aren't United getting Juventus, Pogba? He was this way at Juventus too. And Juve fans used to pull their hair out at his inconsistency there. So it's just been his trait throughout his career. But I still think he's a very talented guy that brings some great qualities to a team. But the ultimate indictment here is that I think Mino Raiola thought he was dropping this huge bombshell, that this was going to be like a Messi burofax moment where it was going to be like the headline of every paper around the world. And the reality is Pogba is just not that relevant right now. Everybody saw that and was like, oh, okay, yeah, interesting. Pogba wants to leave United. And it wasn't like this earth-shattering thing that I think Mino Raiola thought it would be. So that it really is like the ultimate indictment of where Pogba is right now.
But do you think that that's going to be reflected in his lack of options? Because I still think there's a lot of people that will want him.
I think a lot of people would want him. It might not be for the money he's hoping for. Now, that's partially because of the pandemic. And so I don't think it's going to be like some 100 million euro transfer. But sure, for the right price, there's certainly teams throughout Europe that would want him. By the way, a score update, Leipzig, and we'll get to Champions League in a minute, with an early lead on Manchester United. All sorts of implications there. Angelino with the goal. But let's not get too off course here. We've got
no. Look, it's like we said, it's going on. So if it happens, it happens. By the way, we started off the pod talking about Dortmund. They came back. They scored 2 goals and they end up winning 2-1. Right?
Reyna providing the spark. Yeah.
So good for Dortmund. Good for Gio Reyna.
By the way, there is a segue here if you want to go Bundesliga next.
Yeah. Let's do Bundesliga.
So tremendous game between Bayern and Leipzig, ended 3-3. Listen, I know any Bundesliga match involving Bayern, there is this sort of like overarching thing of like, what's the point here? We all know how this is going to end anyway, but still, I still get great enjoyment out of watching Bayern play against Leipzig or against Dortmund. Those tend to be fun, entertaining games. And this one certainly was. Leipzig led 1-0. Then Bayern turned it around, took a 2-1 lead. Then Leipzig ended up turning it around and taking a 3-2 lead, and Bayern equalized. And the only thing I'll say about Nagelsmann, I am a huge fan of his, but he does have a little bit of this Pep mad scientist thing where he sometimes changes too much. There was a 15-minute stretch in the second half in which he made 5 substitutions, and I thought he completely disrupted the rhythm of his team when they were winning and playing well. And Tyler Adams in particular was playing in the midfield, having an excellent game. He makes a change which moves Tyler Adams to right back. And then like 5 minutes later, he makes another change, which moves Adams back to the midfield. And I didn't understand that. It reminded me of like George Costanza, like giving instructions to the cab driver and being like, switch lanes. And then, oh no, my fault, get back on this. You know what I mean? It's like this constant chopping and changing of your team, which I think he takes it to a degree that's unnecessary. It actually hurt his team. But nevertheless, drawing Bayern 3-3 is a good result for Leipzig. And Tyler Adams, I thought, played very well when Nagelsmann left him alone and he was in the midfield. I thought had an excellent game.
Well, I will say, to your point, in terms of watching Bayern Munich, yes, the chances are, and the very good chances are, that Bayern Munich is going to win and win pretty much every game that they go out and play. But when they get themselves into predicaments, I mean, there is still an enjoyment and a joy that I take in watching them get out of these predicaments and going to that well. And maybe it's just a feeling that maybe this is the moment when they go to that well and it's empty. And yet time and time again, they go and it's not empty, and they're able to find a way out of the situations that they get themselves in. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't think it's boring necessarily watching Bayern Munich, even though for the most part, they are going to win every game that they play.
And then continuing on our American theme, Dortmund were held to a 1-1 draw away to Frankfurt. No Haaland, he's injured. He might miss the rest of 2020. But Gio Reyna scored Dortmund's goal with a spectacular strike. So good news there on the American front.
Yep, cutting in from that left-hand side as he likes to do, and just took a look and smacked the thing. So it was great. So, we were seeing Pulisic score, Gio Reyna score, and we'll talk about somebody else scoring here in a second. Anything else Bundesliga?
Yeah, one last thing Bundesliga related. One of the underrated stories in European football so far this season, Leverkusen are unbeaten. They are second in the table above Leipzig and Dortmund. They're just 1 point behind Bayern. So Peter Bosz doing a tremendous job there. They lost Kai Havertz. A lot of people thought they might take a step back this season, but so far so good for Leverkusen, playing very well.
All right, should we skip over to? You want to skip to Spain before we go to Italy? All right, let's do La Liga here, my friend. Barcelona. All right, I asked earlier if Arsenal is as bad as we think they are. I don't think Barcelona is as bad as some say they are, but in a year, as we talked before, where they kind of needed to at least look like that they were returning to some lofty height, they are looking more and more mediocre with each week, and that it's happening in this situation with Messi, that doesn't look good either.
Yeah, they lose 2-1 to Cadiz. The second Cadiz goal might rival Divock Origi's goal for Liverpool against Barcelona in the Champions League for just farcical, like just blooper defense. I mean, how Barcelona, they had a throw in, and I don't know if you saw it, but how they managed to turn that into a Cadiz goal. The throw-in came to Longley, who wasn't quite ready for it, and then Ter Stegen had to come out, and he made a hash of it, and next thing you know, Alvaro Negredo is floating the ball in the back of the net, and Ronald Koeman just had this look on his face like, I mean, are you serious? And so, and you know, the interesting dynamic there is Messi has sat out a couple of Champions League games recently, and they played really well and gotten good results. And then, you know, he comes back for this game, and look, nobody's crazy enough to suggest that on any sort of footballing level, they're a better team without Messi. But there is this sort of sense that the whole Messi situation is sort of casting a dark cloud and dragging the other players down a little bit. And then they're a little, when Messi's not there, there's a little bit of a freedom there to kind of, you know, so, I mean, it's kind of it's an amazing dynamic right now.
Is it possible for Messi to be Wally pipped? I mean, can you get Wally pipped without injury? Can you get Wally pipped just for being a grouch? And while you were out being a grouch, the team did well. Can you imagine that? Oh boy, I don't know. All right. Anyway, anything else? La Liga?
Yeah, I mean, I continue to be bullish on Atletico. They beat Valladolid, which is Ronaldo's team, 2-0. Real Madrid got a nice win. Zidane's been under pressure there, but they won 1-0 away to Sevilla. And so the way it stands now, Atletico Madrid are in first place. They're 12 points. And again, with all due respect to the Real Sociedad and Villarreal, I look at, in terms of the title race, I look at Atletico, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. Atletico in first place, they're 12 points above Barcelona. So I'm almost ready to write off Barcelona as far as winning the league. And Atletico are 6 points clear of Real Madrid. They do have a game in hand. So in theory, they could win that and make it 9. But keep in mind, Atletico, they go to the, well, it's not the Bernabeu because they're playing their games at the Alfredo Di Stefano Training Center. But they're away to Real Madrid this upcoming weekend. So that's the big game in La Liga. So, yeah, I mean, if Atletico ever won that game and then won this game in hand and opened up a 12-point gap on Real Madrid, then it'd be really crazy. But Real Madrid, instead, they're hoping they can close that gap.
So my last question to you when it comes to La Liga, you mentioned so Barcelona in 9th with let's see what points they have, 14 points. Do you think that there is can your big brain wrap itself around the potential of Barcelona not finishing within Europe or in a European place?
It's not outside the realm of possibility. I still would put them in my top 4, but it is such a mess this season that it's not completely outside the realm of possibility. I'll say that.
Wow. That would be grounds for dismissal, firing, sacking, everything.
I'm calling right now, Barcelona Arsenal Europa League final next season. Although Arsenal just getting into a Europa League place at this point would be like a massive.
Oh, wow. All right. Barcelona's bad, but Arsenal. All right. Anything else, Mosse, when it comes to La Liga?
No.
All right. Serie A. And we're going to go right to the American. Weston McKennie, congratulations. Becomes yet another American to score in Serie A. Gets his goal off the head, finds himself open. Off a who put it in Quadrado, whoever. But anyway, scores the goal, makes a little bit of history, and congratulations to him. It was fun. I enjoyed watching it. I felt good, and I felt proud of what he is doing and certainly did on the day.
Did you score in Serie A?
I scored a couple goals in Serie A, yes.
How about that?
I did. So I would be included in that list. That was certainly not I was mostly picking balls out of our own net, given
but yeah, that McKennie goal came in the derby against Torino. They actually, Juve were trailing 1-0 for most of the game. He came on in the second half, got a headed equalizer, and then Bonucci got the late winner. So 2-1 win for Juve, which is big because they stay within touching distance of Milan, who are continue to be lights out. They won 2-1 over Sampdoria without Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Inter took care of Bologna 3-1. Hakimi with 2 goals there. So it's Milan still unbeaten in first place. They're 5 points clear of Inter and 6 points clear of Juventus. That's the story in Serie A.
Okay, Liga.
Well, only thing I'll say there, PSG beat Montpellier 3-1. They actually rested Neymar for this game in preparation for the Champions League game they're playing right now. Lyon, they beat Metz. Lyon are just 2 points back of PSG. Rudy Garcia doing a tremendous job. He's even coaxing some good performance out of this Brazilian guy, Lucas Paquetá, which I did not think was possible. And so this upcoming weekend, big game, PSG hosts Lyon, which should be fun. So it's not often we say there's a big game in Ligue 1, but that is the case this upcoming weekend.
Before we get to Champions League, what are your thoughts on Neymar and his talk about Messi? It was kind of weird and random about that. What do you think he was thinking?
The only thing I'll say is he was answering a question from ESPN Argentina, which I didn't hear the question, but maybe in the question there was already, would you like to play with Messi? I don't know. But yeah, he said that. And people seem to think there's some legs to that if Messi were to leave Barcelona, it might be PSG and not Manchester City, which is the team we should look at, And if you connect all the dots there, Mbappe's contract runs out in 2022. He hasn't signed an extension yet, and people seem to think he might be angling to leave this upcoming summer. And he knows that PSG might not have as much leverage if he has only 1 year left on his deal, and they're facing the specter of him leaving a year later for nothing. So they might be willing to sell him for the right price. Real Madrid and Liverpool are circling there. And so maybe Neymar knows that, and he wants to get a replacement for Mbappe essentially. And so he's working, to bring Messi to PSG. And Leonardo was asked about it as a technical director, and he didn't give it a get out of here. He just said now it's not the time to discuss this. But people took that to mean there's something there that he just doesn't want to go public with it yet.
Would you rather live in Paris or Manchester, Mosse?
I would rather live in Paris.
Wow.
I love Paris so much. I watched Emily in Paris and thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right. There you go. All right. So we mentioned that we are watching Champions League as we speak. RB Leipzig now 2-0.
Yeah. So
over Manchester United, right?
Yeah, the drama in terms of qualification to me is there because presuming PSG are going to take care of business at home today against Istanbul Başakşehir, which I haven't checked the score of that game yet, but it would basically mean Leipzig and United are playing straight up for a spot, Leipzig needing a win, United only needing a draw. But if it's 2-0 Leipzig, then it seems like Leipzig are well on their way and United could be the odd team out here in this group. In terms of star power and glamour, the big story is at Camp Nou. We've got Barcelona hosting Juventus, Messi versus Ronaldo for the 36th time in their careers. And right now it is 1-0 Juventus. Our buddy Jeff Hernandez gave us this update, and I've flipped over to that game. Cristiano Ronaldo from the penalty spot. So far it's Ronaldo 1, Messi 0.
Oh, it's all happening. It is all happening right now. Cool. Anything you want to hit on Champions League?
Again, this podcast will drop tomorrow. These Tuesday games will be over, and there won't be, the Wednesday games will be, who knows, by the time you listen to this, it might have already happened as well. The only thing I'll say on Wednesday is Salzburg host Atletico Madrid. And believe it or not, if Salzburg were to win that game, they would go through. Atletico would be out, which would be a tremendous achievement for Jesse Marsch. So on the American front, there's definitely something to keep an eye on there. And then that Real Madrid group, which is Gladbach, Real Madrid. Real Madrid host Gladbach, and then the other game is Inter hosting Shakhtar, and all four teams still alive. I won't even get into all the different permutations there, but it's absolutely wacky. So that's going to be a very fun group to keep an eye on. I know there's a scenario, by the way, where if Inter jump on top of Shakhtar, then Real Madrid and Gladbach would know that in that scenario, a draw qualifies both of them at Inter's expense. So Inter is a little worried. I guess the expression in Italy is biscotto, which is kind of a reference to when two teams arrange a result so they can both go through. It'd be shades of West Germany, Austria, 1982. And there's a little bit of a fear on the Inter side about a biscotto tomorrow involving Gladbach and Real Madrid. So keep an eye on that. But that group is absolutely crazy.
Wow. All right. Well, you've given us plenty of reasons to watch as it comes down to the wire here, and like we said, it's happening as we speak for today and tomorrow. Okay. Anything else, Mosse, when it comes to our European roundup?
That is it.
All right. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi. All right. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi out there, or Ask Mosse. But anyway, you send us your comments, questions, and concerns, and we pick 2 or 3 of them each week, and we try to answer them or discuss what you want to talk about. What do the people want to talk about this week, Mosse?
First up, at Where's Preki? U.S. men's national team El Salvador match. Based on the U.S. roster, what can we learn?
So the United States men's national team plays its final game of what amounts to, I guess, 4 games this year in 2020, kind of a lost year. U.S. playing a mostly domestic U.S. men's national team playing against El Salvador. So what can we learn? It's hard because this is a team that the U.S. is better than, no matter who is invited into this camp. This is a team that the U.S. is going to outpossess and I think outshoot and ultimately outscore. This is also a team that in the greater good and the greater struggle to evolve and to become an elite team is not a team that we are talking about. Okay, we have always and will continue to expect to beat a team like El Salvador. But having said all of that, there are some holes and some opportunities out there, not the least of which is up top. We've talked about that on numerous podcasts about the fact that Greg Berhalter just does not have that go-to striker, that go-to number 9 up top. For many years, it's been Jozy Altidore, but Jozy is a shell of his former self right now, as was evidenced when we saw him come back into the MLS fold with Toronto FC. He did not look even close to what he needs to in order to make an impact with the national team. Josh Sargent still hasn't grown into what a lot of people, including myself, want him to be. Gyasi Zardes, we know how polarizing at times he can be. I would think he's your starter right now. So up top, you got guys in camp like Daryl Dike. You got guys in camp like Akinola. These types of players that's something we could look for. Does somebody step up and not necessarily claim that position for himself, but demand that they be part of the conversation going forward? And this is a long conversation that's going to continue with these games, but you got to use every opportunity because there's not a lot of games out there. And so for these players that are coming in, and it's not just up top, but that's one of the areas of weakness right now. These players have to show that they deserve to be in that conversation. These players have to put themselves front and center in front of Greg Berhalter and his staff and in front of the public, for that matter, and say, you know what? When everybody gets together, when all of these players that we're so excited about where they're playing and what they are doing over in Europe get pulled into the mix, and we have that ultimate group, at some point we're going to have that moment. You want to make sure that you got a ticket to that camp. And these are the types of camps and moments that you do it, even though you're playing against inferior opposition. The other thing is, Serginho Dest right now is our best right back and our best left back. And yeah, I know you got Reggie Cannon waiting in the wings and Anthony Robinson, but it would be nice to actually have somebody step up from a left back position. Let's see, what else? Walker Zimmerman, so center back type of position. I don't think that we have yet that person who has said, I am going to start next to John Brooks. So that might be somebody, McKenzie, those types of players that might say, hey, this is one of those options. You gotta use this camp to say, hey, I'm here and I'm an option. I don't think anybody's going to solidify their spot in a starting 11 for the U.S. men's national team. I don't know. What are you looking for, Mosse?
Well, let me just say on the topic of American players, a major update. It is now 2-0 Juventus over Barcelona. Weston McKennie with a spectacular goal. That might be an American scoring for Juventus away to Barcelona in a Champions League game. You'd be hard pressed to find anything bigger than that. And wait till you see this goal, an acrobatic volley in the box, just beautiful finish.
I mean, my obligatory and now traditional American flag tweet is about to go out. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. Golazo. The McKennie. I'm reading it off of the news here.
Next question. At Matt Swiftness. People think running a club is like FIFA. And by that, he means the FIFA video game. Can you shed light from your GM experience on how hard it is?
Well, I mean, there are universal challenges. And then there's also moments that you make harder than they should be. And I certainly created and made plenty of those over my time. I had 3 distinct and very unique and different types of experiences in the 3 teams that I was the president and general manager of. One in San Jose that was in the process of relocating, one in New York, New Jersey, which was the Metro Stars, which was in the process of being sold and becoming the Red Bulls, and then one in Los Angeles with the Galaxy that was fundamentally changing because of the designated player rule and obviously the David Beckham hurricane that came in. My job was twofold, and I knew from the moment that I took these jobs that this was my responsibility and this was the job description. It was to have a good product on the field and monetize that product off the field. And as I've said before, I only got part of that right for the most part when it comes to the Galaxy. The other teams, I kind of had more of a balance. All the teams from a monetization and a business standpoint, the irony is that that's not what certainly my background was. That's where we got it right. And that's where we did some really, really good things. The on-field type of product ultimately was not what it should have been. And so marrying those two, if you're in that type of position, and balancing those two and making decisions either for or against one side or the other, I think that in of itself is a skill and an art, and it's certainly not easy. I mean, look, relative to a lot of things in the world, it's an incredibly easy job. We get that, but when you're in it, one of the biggest, I guess, challenges is your weeks. And when I say you, not just you, but oftentimes your family, your weeks are dependent on scores from a game. How your week goes, your mood, the way that you interact is often dependent on a soccer team winning or losing. You try not to have it be, but inevitably it is. And that's not always the healthiest way to live. And some of the best in the business find a way to separate and divorce themselves from those things, but it's very, very difficult. Is it like FIFA? When it comes to the actual money ball of a situation like that, you got to surround, like in anything in business, you need to surround yourself with good people that you trust, people that will not tell you just what you want to hear, and people that are good at their jobs and that you have faith and trust in letting them be good at their jobs and do what you need them to do for the good of the organization. And that's not as easy as it sounds, to be quite honest. But when you do get that, that's where the real science comes into play. And these are decisions that you are going to live with. In FIFA, you get to play another game, you get to go on. Okay. In real life, you're dealing first and foremost not with computer people, you're dealing with actual human beings with all of our flaws and frailties and all of our inconsistencies. And those don't necessarily show up in the FIFA game when you're playing manager. So you have to be able to get through those types of things. And that's not always easy. And you live with the consequences of these decisions that you make. The player that you sign, he or she is good. but did you spend the right amount of money? Have you saved enough money for this? Do you understand all of the different machinations and all the different rules and regulations that exist, especially for a league like Major League Soccer, where there's so many different things? A lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily occur on FIFA, to your point over there. All of that is to say that, is it, to your question, is it hard? For some people, it's hard. For some people, it's not. But relative to people that actually have jobs that are truly hard, no, it's not hard. I mean, we live in sports. I love sports, and obviously sports are our lives and our livelihoods. But relative to a lot of other things out there, it is certainly not hard. Doesn't mean that I can do it and do it consistently well. But you're working in sports. If you have that gig, if you have that opportunity, you're incredibly fortunate and to a certain extent privileged to be able to do it. And if you are good, then you become very, very valuable to that industry. Okay, I hope I answered that question. Anything else, Mosse?
So we'll end on this. Last week, Alex Dowd inserted a question regarding whether Luis Suarez was one of the top 5 greatest center forwards of all time. We sort of addressed that, but then Alex was also hoping to get from us, or at least from you, a list of your top 5 greatest center forwards ever. And you were blindsided a little bit and weren't quite ready. So we decided, hey, let's give it a week. We'll revisit this. So yeah, the question, just to read it, is at A Robinson 1987, would you say Luis Suarez is one of the greatest number 9s in history, perhaps top 5? So like I said, we already addressed that last week. Are you ready to give us now your top 5 all-time center forward? You know what Alex Dowd is thinking. He thinks people love lists, so he's trying to get a little Twitter graphic out of this. ALEXI LALAS's top 5 greatest strikers ever. He thinks that.
Well, I'm not gonna let him do that.
As you know, people on Twitter are always very recipient to your opinions and react positively to them. And
I'm not gonna let him do that because I have 4. I need you to help me, my friend. I need you to help me with this 5th one, to spin me or sell me on who I should have for my. All right, so my 4 are Zlatan, Ronaldo, Eusebio, and Lewandowski. So I need one more. This all started because of the Suarez conversation, right? Luis Suarez.
It's interesting because, for all the talk about recency bias, generally speaking, the more prevalent bias in sports media is towards the past. People love to romanticize, glorify, mythologize the past. And when doing these all-time lists, I do feel like there's a certain bias towards older players. You included 2 active players in Lewandowski and Zlatan, so you don't suffer from that bias. You have no problem giving current players their due. I would say, since you already have 2 active guys there and Ronaldo, who's fairly recent, maybe reach back for your 5th for somebody like a Marco van Basten, or even go farther back and somebody like Gerd Muller. I would say those would be the options. And you do have Eusebio, though, so you do have an older player.
Yeah, and okay. And I feel like I'm almost posturing with the Eusebio one because it's not like I grew up watching Eusebio, okay? I have watched him, and I can see the greatness in that, and so that's where that comes from. And all right, the Van Basten stuff. All right, I'll go with Van Basten. I want. You know what? I might do Suarez. I don't know. You do Van Basten over Suarez?
I would. Yeah.
Why?
I thought he was a more transcendent player. Obviously, he had the injuries, so Suarez has put up better numbers than him. But at their absolute peaks, Van Basten was a more transcendent player.
Okay, then I'm definitely putting Suarez in. All right, there we go. I got Suarez. What do you got?
I don't have a 5 per se. Certainly don't have anything that I want Alex Dowd to post on Twitter.
Okay.
But if I was being honest, I would put Ronaldo and Romario both in there, but I don't want to be accused of Brazilian bias. So I'll choose one of those 2, and by the way, that's an eternal debate in Brazil, Ronaldo versus Romario. I will go with Ronaldo. And then my current active player would be Zlatan. I think his body of work merits inclusion there. And then Van Basten would be in there for me. Gerd Muller. And then I would either put Eusebio or Puskas as that else guy. Although, in speaking to my father about this morning, he said, because I go to him for sort of older players, and he said Puskas wasn't quite the out and out center forward that I assumed he was. That he played, obviously formations have sort of changed over the years, so it's hard. It's back then everybody played in sort of this 4-2-4 or different variations of that, and it's hard to sort of determine what that translates to into positions today. It's not always translate so neatly, but nevertheless, he sort of talked me out of the Puskas thing on the basis that he wasn't quite the out and out center forward that I thought he was. So I guess I'll go Eusebio then. So I would go Zlatan, Ronaldo, who did I say? Van Basten, Gerd Muller, and Eusebio.
Gerd Muller. All right, so I have Lewandowski and you have Gerd Muller. I have Suarez and you have Van Basten. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, let us know out there what you think of our picks out there, and that does answer A. Robinson 1987's question about Suarez. So, yeah, if I wasn't convinced last week, I think a week has made me more convinced about Luis Suarez in there. And I don't think, I'm sure we missed some. People are going to say, "Oh, I can't believe you didn't have this person," but I don't think we missed any obvious ones out there. All right, Mosse, anything else when it comes to Ask Alexi?
I do want to. So it's a weird note to end the podcast on, but an absolutely bizarre story. I do want to at least mention it. PSG are playing Istanbul Başakşehir right now, and both teams have walked off the field alleging that the referee made a racist remark to one of the players. And so, that I don't know what's going to become of that. So yeah,
what a mess. Well, I mean, look, these are things that are happening in real time, as we said, and because of that, we don't have all of the information. This could be confirmed. This could be denied. This could be blown out of the water. We don't know. But regardless, there is plenty to talk about going forward on, and I guess even off the field when it comes to Champions League with what's going on. All right, listen, we are not going to end it on that note. We still got one for the road, and a very special one for the road coming up. So we're going to take one last little break, and coming back, we are going to say a fond farewell. Don't go away. All right, welcome back. I appreciate you coming back here for one for the road. We end each and every podcast with one for the road, and this podcast is special to a certain extent because we are bidding adieu. We are saying goodbye. We are saying arrivederci to Alex Dowd. Alex, I know you hide behind that curtain right there, but can you at least come out and turn your microphone on so the people can hear and turn your camera on too. I hope you're not naked, but turn it on so we can at least see and hear you. Come on. There. Okay. Microphone's open. There he is. Oh my Lord. Look at your facial hair. Well, if anybody ever needed any proof that you were a Chelsea nut, there you go. Look at that. Yep. So here's the deal. Alex Dowd has been with us over the last couple of years and has been such a huge and important part of our podcast in getting it ready, even in real time, helping us and steering us in the right direction. And then after the fact, making sure that it gets out to you. He is vital and has been vital to making this, whatever this is for everybody else. Whatever good you find in the State of the Union podcast, a lot of it can be attributed to David Mosse and Alex Dowd. And Alex Dowd has done so much stuff for us behind the scenes. He's not leaving the company. He is not dying. We're all dying, but he's not dying right now. He is just going on to some bigger and better things. And that's what happens when you have somebody of quality. That's what happens when you have somebody who knows what they are doing. They get very, very valuable and sought after. And that's what's happening here. So on behalf of all of us here at the State of the Union, Alex, we want to thank you for everything that you have done. We want to wish you well going forward. We hope that you will come back and drop in every once in a while and let us know how it's going. We will continue with our text change so we can make fun of you for the team that you support and the ridiculousness that is your facial hair and everything else. And we wish you luck going forward in all the different things that Fox is going to have you doing. Is there anything that you would like to say to the people out there before you head on your merry way?
I mean, I'll keep it brief. Just know that it's been a great time. It's been an honor, pleasure working with you guys. And of course, and big thank you to all the listeners. And I go through a lot of the iTunes reviews and all that stuff, and going through all the Ask Alexi questions and seeing that there's just such a diverse following of people that love you and also hate you, which is exactly what you want from somebody that is a podcast host. And Mosse as well. It's good to see that you've grown and have an own Ask Alexi or Ask Mosse hashtag. So, it's good to see. And I'm leaving you in the very capable hands of Luis Aguilar, Jeff Hernandez, and Will Hagel is helping with the audio. So I'm sure you guys will be much improved upon my departure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, don't think for a second that this isn't getting better the minute that you leave. We understand that, but as I said, thank you for everything you're doing. In all honesty, you have made all of our jobs and lives so much easier for so long in terms of what we're doing. And I will say that when I used to go on the road a lot, and even on Twitter or social media, or just people that I come by who want to talk about the podcast. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people that want to talk about it. Inevitably, they will bring up Alex Dowd. And you are at times a man of mystery. Not a lot of people necessarily know what you look like or sound like and everything. So this is the most camera and microphone time that you have ever taken up. So don't judge it all on this, people. Okay, he's much more than what you have seen or heard right here. But ultimately, he is a wonderful person, and he's great at his job. And I wish, as I said, on behalf of all of us here, I wish you well going forward. And thank you so much. And you are leaving us, as you said, in the capable hands of Jeff and Louise, and we shall go onward and upward and forward when it comes to the podcast. But whatever success and path that we take, know that you had a lot. You were heavily involved and had a lot to do with where we are so far. So thank you so much. Anything else, Mosse?
Well, look, I respect you for towing the party line here, but I'd like to actually tell the people what really happened. This is a demotion for Alex Dowd. Being the producer of the State of the Union podcast is the single most desirable position, I would argue, in all of Fox Sports. And he had it for 3 years. It didn't work out. And so we're going to make a change. Unfortunately, he has this massive contract. They don't want to have to pay him off. So this is just, they're finding a place to put him. That's what's happening here.
I mean, but to be fair, he wields a lot of power. Okay. And I don't know if you've met his agent, but holy sweet mother. Oh my goodness.
They're making room for me next to Strahan on Sunday mornings on Fox NFL Sunday. So you guys can find my hot takes there, and hopefully I can squeeze some Chelsea chatter into our, big flagship show.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of yet another State of the Union podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for reviewing and downloading and rating and doing all the different things that you do out there on all the different platforms where you get your State of the Union. We will be back again next week at our regular scheduled time on Monday, out on Tuesday. And until then, as always, we love Alex Dowd and size the day. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.